This is a PowerApps application with a modern multi-view gallery design which can switch between a list layout and a grid layout. And in this video, I will show you how to build yours. This video is the second in my short Modern PowerApps series, and in the first video, we went through the app layout and the cool card gallery design at the top of the screen. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to build a modern multi-view gallery which can switch between a list layout and a grid layout. With that being said, let's get into the video. Now we're in PowerApps Studio, and as usual, all apps, components and datasets built in my videos are available for download to channel members. And for those in regions where YouTube membership isn't available, I've opened a Patreon page which also provides solution and dataset downloads to members. So join the community today if you're interested in following my tutorial step by step. So let's do our multi-view gallery now. Looking at our design, we have one line containing the section title and a couple of buttons, and the second line containing the gallery. So first, we select the line 3 container and change its direction to vertical, since we want the items to be stacked on top of each other. And then we're going to change the border radius to about 20 and remove the drop shadow. Then we want the fill to be white. And yeah, that's that. Let's also add in padding all around it. So we're going to add in 20 padding all around it. So 20 on the left, 20 on the bottom, 20 on the right. But on the top, we want 10 padding. And yeah, that's cool. So next, let's begin adding the individual lines in our gallery. So starting from the first line, we're going to add in a container. So this time it's be an horizontal container. And then we want the height of this one to be just about 50. So we're going to turn off the flexible height and set the height to 50. Then let's remove the drop shadow. We don't want that. We also don't want any border radius. So its layout is actually a bit similar to the layout of our of our header. So let's I guess we can copy that actually just to save time. So copy, and then we're going to paste it inside of this. For this one, we don't want it to be, for the text, we don't want it to be that thick. So we are going to use Lato and set the font size to about 11. Going to change this text to all car details. Cool. And we don't want the custom search, but we want the button. We actually in fact want 2 buttons, so we're going to copy this and paste it. And then for the first button, let's change the width to be about 150. So we want this one to be 150. For the other one, we want it to be about 100. So then let's change the text inside of it. For this one, we're going to change the label to add new car. So this is the button you can use to add a new car. For this one, we're going to use it as our our filter. So you're going to say filter button. Cool. So we don't want 2 of them to be the same color. So for the left button, we are just going to change it up a bit. First of all, we are going to change the fill. Instead of secondary color, we want it to be the primary color. And then let's add in a border color. So we're going to select advanced and just go to border, just click. So the border color, we are going to use a secondary text color for that. And then let's add in a border of, I think 1 should be all right. Cool. So then let's do the text also. For the texts, we want it to be a different color. So now this one, we're going to use the secondary text color. I think that's it. Yeah, secondary text color should be fine. And then for the icon, let's change that to be our our filter icon. So I'm going to select the image and modify that to be our filter icon while also using the secondary text color, which is dark gray. Yep, and that looks great.
I like it a lot.
So now that's done, let's move to the next line, which is actually where we'll contain our gallery. But before that, let's just rename this one to be something we can reference properly. So gallery let's call it gallery title. So that will serve as a gallery title. Oh, so anytime you rename a container, you might need to just resize the item. So now I've set it back to stretch, and I think all is great. Yeah, so now let's move to the actual gallery. So we are going to add in a container for our gallery header and gallery body. So let's close this first. So now let's add in a vertical container. So I'm going to select container and select a vertical container. So we want the border to be 1. Let's set the border radius to be about 10, and let's remove the drop shadow. We don't want any drop shadow. And then for the actual border color, let's set that to our secondary text color, which is the gray. Yeah, so this will serve as the container for our gallery, and let's just rename this also to serve as the container. Yeah, so cool. Then the next thing is we're going to do the table headers first, and then the table data or table body. So let's first select that, and let's add in a responsive container, but this time an horizontal responsive container. So container horizontal responsive container. So this one is what to serve as our header, and we want the height to be 50. So we're going to turn off the flexible height and set its height to about 50. We don't want any drop shadow, we don't want any border radius, so we are going to clear all of that. And then let's add in a little bit of padding on the left and right. So 10 on the left, 10 on the right, and then we want it to have a different color from the rest of the gallery, so let's add in a little bit of a fill. So we're going to use the primary color for that, and that will give it that gray, that light gray color. Okay, cool. And then we'll just rename this to table header so we can reference it easier. So table headers. Okay, so inside of this one, we'll then begin adding in the different text labels. So starting with the first one, let's just add one. Yeah, now we need to make sure it fills the container, I mean vertically. So we're going to set its height to stretch, and then set the minimum height to 0. So it will always take the height of its what's it called now, always take the height of its parent container. As for the width, we're going to make it have flexible width, and then all we just need to do is to style it first, and then we can copy and paste it a bunch of times. So for this one, we're going to set it to make, and then we are going to set its font type to Lato. We're going to set its font size to 9 and font weight to semi bold, and yeah, that looks great. So next thing is the color. We are going to use the secondary text color for that. Secondary text color. Yep, and yeah, that's that. So we just need to copy and paste this a bunch of times, as many times as needed. So we are going to have about maybe like 9. So let's just copy and paste that. So copy and paste. So you just do that as many times as needed. So we've copied and pasted it, and then we just, all we need to do is to just change the different label names to match what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now we've done with that. If you plan to have like buttons on the right side, you also need to take make provision for that. So what we're going to do is add in a rectangle on the end of it, and make sure its fill is set to transparent. As you can see, we have it's bigger than what we need. So for some of them, we're just going to reduce the size and set an actual size for them. So for example, the fleets, that one is going to be smaller. We're going to set it to about, I think 100 will do. For the year, I think we can also turn that off and set it to be about 100. Yeah, and that is fine. So then for the container on the right, sorry, for the rectangle on the right, so this is basically setting space for what's it called, for buttons if you want to have some. So we're just going to set the stretch to stretch, so its height to stretch, and set the minimum height to 0, and then just turn off flexible width and just set whichever one you want. So we want about 100 for that, or you can also reduce it if you need be. Also, you only want to add one button, so 100 is actually too much, so let's say 50. So we need to turn off flexible width first, then set its width to 50. So yeah, so that's the space that our buttons will take, and then the text will take the rest of them. Yeah, so now we are done with our headers. The next thing is actually the, what's it called now? The table data. So first of all, we're going to select the gallery container and then add in another container to serve as the container for our data. So this one is going to be horizontal container now, and then we can just name this to container underscore table data, just so we can reference it correctly. And then we don't need any much changes. Let's just add in a little bit of padding. So 10 on the left, 10 on the right, remove the border radius, remove the drop shadow. We don't need all of that. And then we can just add in our gallery inside it directly. So then we add in a gallery. Then we need to make sure it fills the container. We are going to set its vertical alignment to stretch, set its minimum height to 0, and set the turn on flexible width, and set the minimum width also to 0. So depending on the width and height of the parent container, it's also going to take that width for itself. Yeah, and that is that. For this one, let's just set it to blank because we don't really want any much inside of it. So let's turn on flexible width back. Yeah, so that's cool. So inside of this, we are then going to add in our data.
Okay, let's go.
So let's select the data source. Okay, so it's loaded it, and now let's begin adding in the controls inside of it. So first, select the gallery and click this to select the template, and then we just want to copy this header. Since that's the same column structure, we can just copy the whole header actually, and then select the gallery, select the template, and then paste that inside of it. So what we're going to do is to make sure this one fills the template width. So we're going to set the X value to 0, the Y value to 0, and make it fill the width of the gallery template. So we're going to set the width to parent.template width. Yeah, so template width, and then set the height also to what's it called now? Parent.template height. Obviously, we need to reduce the template size. So we're going to select the gallery and reduce that to about, I think 50 should be okay. Or let's reduce it to 40, and then let's remove padding since we don't want any padding. And this one we can just name it table content or whatever, table content. And then we remove the fill. We don't want any fill, so we're going to set it to transparent. Or we can just do color.transparent instead of RGBA 000. All right, cool. And let's remove the left and right padding from it, just so it matches what we have inside of the header. And yeah, there we have it. So all that is left now is for us to just begin adding in the actual content. So rather than this placeholder text, let's begin adding in the data.
But before that, it has come to my attention that 82% of viewers are not subscribed to the channel.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
If you've learned something in this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel to get notified whenever I release new content. So let's get back to our video.
Let's select everything and change the color. So this is not the color. We want to use black instead. So we're going to use our primary text color. Okay, and we don't want it to be bold. We're going to set it to normal and leave it as later. So that's cool. Now, when building your gallery table body, there are just two things that I think are really important that we need to understand. If you are just going to have only texts, you can leave the label as is. But then if the column is going to be a combination of controls, you should add a container first and then add your control combination. For example, in this make column, I want to add the logo of the car make and then the name. For the model, it's just going to be text, so we're going to leave that. For the year, it's just going to be text, we're going to leave that. For the list status, I want it to be a text field, and a text field is a combination of controls, so we have to add in a container here. For the license plate, that one is just going to be text, so we leave this. For the fleet, this one we are going to do some sort of badge that has the fleet number on it, so we're going to add the container since the combination of controls. For the monthly lease rate and the purchase price, those ones are just text, so we are just going to leave it as is. So now let's start from the easier ones before we go to the combination ones. For the purchase price, we are just going to use this item.purchase price, and then we formatted it to show as a currency. And then the monthly lease rates should also be similar. We are going to use this item.monthly lease rates, and we have formatted it as a currency. And then for the license plates, we're going to do that. The license plates, it should be this item, the license plates, but then I'm going to add in a, what's it called now, hashtag beside it. And let's just recolor it. I want it to be a grayish color, so we're going to use the secondary text color for that, and then we're just going to make it semi-bold. Yeah, so we're going to make it semi-bold. For the list status, as I said, we are going to add the text view, so we'll leave that for now. For the year, we're just going to use this item dot year, and then for the model, we're just going to use this item dot model. Okay, that's it. So now let's go to the make, the lease status, and the fleet number. So starting from this one, as I said, I want to have the logo of the car make and then the name. So we're going to replace this with a container. So first of all, let's add in, and since we want it to be side by side, we're going to add in a horizontal container. So I'm just going to search container and add it here. And just make sure, bring it to the what's it called, reorder it to the stats, because that's what we wanted. And then you just need to make sure it has the same settings as its header. So for the header, which is the make column, we have a fill portion of 1 of 6, and we have a minimum width of 150. So that's what we'll do for this. So it should be 1 of 6. So this extra one, which is the make, we're just going to remove that and put it inside of this, and then make sure that it's 1 of 6, minimum width 150, and yes, that makes it the same size. And then you can just remove the border radius, drop shadow, we do not need that. And then minimum height, just set that one to 0, so it will always take its height from its parent. Okay, so that's cool. For this one, minimum width, we can just leave it as, let's say 100 or something, and then we are going to add in the logo of the car make. So there are different ways to go about this. You can either store the logo in a SharePoint site, or if you have capacity for it in a Dataverse table, that's going to be more expensive, or you can just upload it directly on the app and then link it to the name. And we're just going to go for the third option here. I'm going to upload all the car logos as SVG images right now, because SVG images are smaller than the actual images. So the SVG images are just going to be like 10 kilobytes, 9 kilobytes. Everything won't be up to 200. So we're just going to upload that. So now the logos are imported, and let's add it to our gallery now. So inside of the container for the make column, we're going to add in an image control now. So image control, move it to the left, so reorder, move to start, and we want it to just be 30 wide and 30 high. So we're going to set its alignment to center, set the height to 30, set the width also to 30, and then just set the border radius to 30 also. So this will always make it a square. And then for the image property, we're just going to add in a switch condition that checks what the make is, and depending on what the make is going to add in the logo of that make. So switch this item.make. So if the item is Audi, it uses the Audi logo. If it's BMW, it uses the BMW logo. And this is because we've uploaded it in the in the app. If you were using like a SharePoint site or something else, or SharePoint document library rather, or a Dataverse table to store them, you just link them appropriately, either using the switch statement or however you've linked it in your data source. Okay, so yeah, that's that. We are going to add in a little bit of padding around it. So I think 5 around it should be fine. So 5 on the left, 5 on the top, 5 on the bottom, 5 on the left, and 5 on the right. And then for the fill, I want to give it a fill of what's it called now, a highlight color. And then let's also add in a border. So we're going to add in a border of 2, and let's also add in the border color. So we want to use a border color of our secondary color, which is the blue around the app, and that looks cool. Then let's add in let me close this. Then let's add in a little bit of padding on the left side of this, so the icon is not just touching the border. So just going to add in a little bit of padding. So I'm going to add padding of 4, and yeah, that looks better. So as I said, if you are combining controls within a column, use a container. If you're not going to combine controls, just use the text directly. And then for the text, obviously we need to change that to this item dot make. Yeah, so you have Toyota, Ford, and blah blah blah, all of that there. So now let's go to the list status. We are going to add in a container also, container, responsive container, and just move it to where it's meant to be. So reorder, move left. So basically once you move left once, you can now begin using the arrow keys to move it. And then let's copy this list status, or cut it out rather, and paste it inside of this. And then for the container itself, just make sure it has the same settings or configuration as the header. So this one is 1 of 6, the fill portion is 1 of 6, and minimum width is 150. And then we do the same thing for this. So this one 1 of 6, so we change this one to 150. And then make sure the minimum height is set down to 0, so it will only depend on its parent. And then turn off the border radius, set it to 0. The drop shadow, set it to none. And yeah, there we have it. So for this one, we want a text fill that will change color depending on the list status. Let me change the list status to the actual value. So that will be this item dot list status. Okay, and then we want to have a text fill inside of it. So inside of the container, we are now going to add in a non-responsive container this time. So this is what is going to house text, and then cut the label and then paste it inside of that container. And then make sure its x and y value is equals to 0, and the width is equal to parent the width and parent the height respectively. For the height, so the height is parent dot height. And then just make sure that this container fills its parent container properly. So we set the flexible width, turn it on, and set the minimum width to 0, set the minimum height to 0, and then we should have it inside. So for this one, we want a little bit of padding on it. So I mean on the column container rather. So we're going to add in 5 padding all around it. And then for this one, we are then going to do our different configuration. I mean, for the text fill itself, we're going to do our configurations for that. Let's first add in a border of, I think 2 should be okay. And yeah, border radius about 10 should be okay. Remove the drop shadow, we don't need that. Okay, so now we just need to apply colors to this thing. Before that, let's make this text centered, right? And I guess we can also reduce the width. So rather than making the width fill the full width of its column, we can just make it a static value. So we turn off flexible width and change it to, let's change it to 100. I think that looks a little bit better. Okay, and then for the text, we are just going to add in a condition for the color. But before that, let's change the font weight to semi-bold first. Yeah, cool. And then for the color, we just need to add in a condition. So we're going to select the fill property, and add this condition. So then this checks the list status. So this item does list status, and since it is a choice column, we have to enclose it in text to get the text value of that choice column. So if list status is equal to active, it should use this green. If it's equal to pending, it should use this brown, and then if it's ended, it should use this purple, right? And yeah, there we have it. And then we just we'll just set the border color to the same thing as that text. So we're going to copy this text name, then select the container and change its border color to match that of the text. So the border color, we're going to set it to label dot text color, or label dot color, so that will get the same color as the text. And then for the fill property, we're just going to do something similar for it. So but we are going to make it fade a little bit. So rather than just using the same color, we're going to fade it a little bit. So color fade, so color fade, then label dot color, but we are now fading it by about 95%. And yeah, there we have it. Our text fill is more or less done. So the next thing is the fleet ID, or the fleet number. For this one, let's first add in a responsive container as we've done for the rest. So responsive container, and then move it to where we want it to be. So move left, and then we can use the right or the left button to move it. And then we copy this one, or cut it out and paste it inside of this. And then for the container, make it have the same as the its header column. So for this one, we turned off the flexible width and set its width to 100. So we're going to do the same thing for our new container now. We're turning off the flexible width and setting it to 100, so it matches our header. And then you just need to set the minimum height to 0, so it will fit in the templates properly. Okay, so yeah, that's that. So let's also remove the border radius and the drop shadow. We do not need that. And then, as I said, we want to use some sort of badge for it. So we are going to use a star icon, but since we can't just add the star icon inside, we should add it inside of a container, but this time it's going to be a non-responsive container, right? And then let's just delete this one, we don't need it. So inside of this container, just make it about 30 wide, 30 tall. So first we select it to be center, and then set the height to 30, turn off the flexible width, and set the width also to 30. So this is where we'll put in our star icon, and then we just need to look for the icon. Icon, I think it's something star, or rather let's just check shapes. Yeah, it should be in shapes here. Yeah, so 12 points star. Yeah, so this is what we will use for our fleet ID. And then just make sure it fields its parent container. So we are going to set this one, set the x value to 0, set the y value to 0, set the width and height to parent dot width, and the height also to parent dot height. Yeah, and there we have it. For its parent container, we just remove the border radius and drop shadow. We don't need that. And then let's add in the text label on top. I guess we shouldn't have deleted it before.
Stupid guy.
Yeah, so let's just add in another one. Add in a text label on top, set the x and y value to 0, and set the width and height to parent the width and parent the height respectively. And then inside of this, we'll just make it have a fleet ID. So this will be this item. So select the text property and set it to this item dot fleet ID. And then we just reduce the font size to 9 to match the rest, set it to semi-bold, and set its font type to Lato. Then make it, obviously have to make it centered. And then for the color, I guess we can leave it, but it should be our primary color. So custom theme dot primary color. Oh, sorry, primary text color rather. So primary text color. Yeah, so that's like the dark blue. And for the star, let's change it to gold. So we're going to select the star, add in a border, and then for the border color we're going to use the gold color. So gold is 255215001. And then for the fill of the star, let's add in the same gold, but then we fade it by 80%, and I think that looks great. There we have it. Our list view is more or less done, and now what we just need to do is to add in the button on the right. So we can just copy our custom button that we've developed earlier and then paste it at the end. So this one still follows the same rule as the others. If you are combining multiple things inside one column, we should use a container, and this last column is the column for our buttons, so we should also use a container to house it. So we're going to add in a horizontal container and then make it have the same configuration as its parent. So the parent is, we turned off the flexible width and we set it to 50. So we're going to have to do the same thing for this one. We turn off flexible width and set the width to 50. All right, and we set the minimum height to 0 so it fills the container. Turn off border radius, so clear border radius, and turn off drop shadow, and then we can paste our custom button inside of it. And for this custom button, we just want it to be 25 25 25 25. Yep. And we don't need any text, we only want the icon. So we are going to clear the label, and then for the image we just need to make sure it fills the container. So we set the x and y value to 0 and set this one and set the width and height to parent.width and parent.height respectively. So parent.width, parent.height respectively. Yep. Okay, and then we need to change the icon to match the icon we actually want to use, and I want to use the right arrow icon. Okay, and that is that. We can also add in a little bit of padding if that's too big. So I'm going to add in a padding of 3 and 3. I want to add in a separator between the gallery rows, so there should be a line under each of them. So we're going to select our gallery. Let's close this one. Go to select our gallery, select the template, and then add in a rectangle control. So this rectangle control, we're going to set the x and y value to 0, and then the height, we want it to just be about 1 thick, and then the width should be the parent.template width. So that will fill the template width. And then for the color, we want to use our primary color, which is the light gray, and let's just bring it to the bottom. So we set the y value to parent.template height minus self the height. Yeah, there we have it. So that's it. We are done with our list view. So as I said, this is going to be a multi-view gallery, and it's going to have a list layout and a grid layout. So before we do the grid layout, we have to actually do the button or the control that will do the switching from one layout to the other layout. So let's build our custom components to switch between layouts.
Okay.
We'll go to the components page and create a new component. I'm going to name it custom toggle. And then let's add in a container, a responsive container this time. So anyone is fine. So let's just add in a horizontal container, and then you need to make sure it fills its parent. So we set the x value to 0, the y value to 0, set the width to parent.width, set the height to parent.height. All right, and let's also clear the border radius and clear the drop shadow. We don't need any of those. And then inside of this, that's when we can now begin adding in our components, our controls rather. So inside of this, I'm now going to add in a horizontal responsive container. So this one, it has to be horizontal now. And then inside of this, So for the parent, let's just add in a little bit of padding. So let's just say 1 padding all around. And then for this one, let's add in a border. So a border of 2. And let's change the, what's it called? Let's change the border radius to 10. I think that should be okay. And we don't need any drop shadow. So we are going to set it to none. And yeah, let's also change the size of this to match what we are building. So since this is a little jarring, so we're going to set this one, the width to 70, and set the height to about, what's it now, 35. So we need to set the minimum width and minimum height to 0. So yeah, we set the minimum width of both of the inner container to 0, and then we have it as a little cute button. Okay, so now we just need to add in 2 image controls inside of this that will serve as what to render our icon. So we're going to set image, and then set its height alignment to stretch, set its minimum height to 0, and then set the minimum width to, turn on flexible width first. I set the minimum width to what's it called now, to 0 or 10 actually. Okay, and then we'll just duplicate that. So we'll have 2 images side by side showing our icons and all of this. Okay, so now we are done with the base layout. We just need to set up our custom properties that will get the color and the icons we are going to use. So the first custom property we are going to create is the base background color. So that will be base BG. So this one is going to be input property type, or we're going to set it as a color variable. So this is what the base background of the image will look like. So let's create that, and we can set the default value to gray. And then the next one we're going to create is the selected background. Yeah, so this is going to be the background of an icon when it's selected. So this one is also going to be an input property. We're going to set it as a color variable and save it, and let's set the default value to our blue. Okay, and then the next thing is the actual color of the icon, so the base icon color now. So in this case, if you are using what's it called now, if you are using the default icons from PowerApps, you should create this as a so base icon color underscore text. So as I was saying, you should create it as a color variable rather than text variable. But for us, since we are using SVG icons, we are creating them as text versions. So you're going to save that base icon color underscore text, and it's also going to be a sort of gray color, dark gray color. And then we'll also do the same thing for our selected icon color rather. So create new custom property, selected icon color underscore text. The data type is text, and we save it, and then the default value would be, yeah, this one. All right, and then lastly, we should also store the icons that we're going to use. So we're just going to add a new property. We'll call it icon1. So this will be the icon on the left side, and it should be a text value, or text variable rather, and then have icon2. So we can just get the SVG icons that we'll use for that. So for icon1, we're going to use this SVG. So I got it from Bootstrap, is the list SVG, and then for icon2, it's going to be this one, also from Bootstrap. So let's begin adding in the values. Let me increase this one in size a bit. Okay, for the image on the left, we're going to add this. So we are using icon1, and we are using the base icon color for now. And for the right one, we will use icon2. Okay. And for both of them, we also need to just add in a little bit of padding. So I'm going to select both of them and add in a padding of 8 at the top and bottom, just so it's a little bit smaller inside of the, what's it called now, inside of it. Then let's do the other colors. I'm going to select the container containing the images and set its border color to the selected BG, so that will match the BG of the selected icon. So yeah, before we move any further, we need to set the functionality for clicking. So anytime you click one, it should switch to one value. Once you click it again, it should go back to the other value. So basically the toggle switch. So now let's add in a button. So you're going to add in the button control now inside of the toggle root. So a button, and you should make it fill the whole toggle. So set X to 0, set Y to 0. We need to make sure that the values here, the values on the right side and at the top are the same, and set them to 0. So for the width, set that one to parent dot width and parent dot height, and then clear the text, and we want it to be transparent. We don't want any border on it. And for the fill color, for the press color, let's just use the transparent is it black now, transparent black, and we'll set this to 0.1, and then for the hover color, we're going to set it to 0.2, and there we have it. Okay, so now all we need to do is to add in the logic on the items. So we're going to add in this value. So in the on select property, we're going to add in this code there. So we are creating a new variable, active toggle ID. So basically it's checking if active toggle ID is equal to 1, it's going to set the toggle ID to 2. But if it's not equal to 1, meaning if it's 2, you should change it to 1. Obviously, if you have more than 3 items in your toggle, you would have to use like a switch statement instead of like this simple if to do your your logic. So but this one we have only 2 items, so we can use a simple if statement. So basically once we click it, it's going to be 1, and once you click it again, it's going to be 2, then click it again, it's going to come back to 1. All right, so now one of the most important steps is that we need to set which one is like the default value. So in the on reset property, so select your components and then go to the on reset. So we are going to now add in a code there. So in the on reset property, we are going to add in set active toggle ID to be 1. So basically anytime you reset this component, is going to set the toggle ID to 1. So obviously if you don't want 1 to be your default, you can set it to 2, or if you have multiple, set it to whichever one you want to be the default value. So now that we've done the logic and the toggling, we now need to modify the the actual icons to match that. So for the left icon, we're going to add in an if statement instead of this. So we're going to change it. So if active toggle ID is equal to 1, it should use the selected icon color, else you should use the base icon color which was using before. So basically if it's selected, use selected icon color, if not, use the base one. And then for the other one, it's going to be a similar code. We just need to change it, so icon 2 and icon 2. Okay, and if you test it out, you can see it's switching between the 2 different colors. So now the last thing to do is to set the fill of the image control. So we are going to select the image control, and in the fill property add this code to it. So it's checking if active toggle ID is equal to 1, so meaning if the left ID is the active one, we should set it to the selected BG, which is blue, and also should make it transparent. And then we'll do something similar for the right one. So if active toggle is equal to 2 now, then use the selected BG, else be transparent, and our custom toggle is more or less working. So now the last part of the puzzle is for us to create an output property that can send the value to outside of the app. So in that case, we are going to create a new property and this time it's going to be an output property. So create a new custom property, set its type to output, and then the name is going to be active toggle ID, and we are going to set it to be a number variable since we are storing IDs inside of it. And then the value we are going to add inside of it is the toggle ID. So basically, as you are switching between toggle states, it's going to be setting this active toggle ID, and that in turn is controlling the output property that's going to be sent outside of our app. And there we have it. Our custom toggle is done. All we need to do now is to add it into our app. So I'm going to go back into our screen. Let's reduce the size of this. Also, something I think I forgot to mention, if you don't want this loading delay on your galleries, you need to make sure that you turn off the delay item loading. So property is called delay item loading. So if you set that to false, your data will load as quickly as possible. So if you test that again, yeah, it loads as quickly as the page loads. All right, yeah, so let's add in our button. So it's going to be here just beside the car button, and inside of this container we're going to add in one of our custom properties, which is custom toggle. And since we want it to be centered, we're going to select the alignment to center. Can leave the height as 35, leave the width as 35. Obviously, if you're using it on another app, you can then set the base BG, the selected BG, and then different colors. So this one, we can connect it to our primary color, this one to our secondary our secondary text color, and all of that as well. That's fine since it's still within the same app. Okay, and the width, I think the width is fine. Let's also select the parent container, this one, and set its alignment to center, so the item can also be centered. Okay, and then the issue about setting the default value. So if you want a situation where anytime they open this page, it should set this custom toggle to a default value, all you need to do is on visible of this page, do a reset call. So reset and wherever your toggle name is, so custom toggle, so custom toggle _1. So basically anytime they open this page, it's going to reset it. But basically if you want it to be a one-time thing, so anytime they just open the app for the first time, it should set the default one, but then as they change it and go within the pages, it should keep their changes. In that case, you would set it in the onStart property of your app. So in the onStart property, we are resetting it. So anytime they open the app, so we can try onStart now. So as you see, we've run the onStart and it has set the default value. But if inside of this you set the default value or the reset value, so on reset. So if you set this one to 2 rather than 1, anytime someone comes into the app newly, it will be reset to obviously the second one, but also you want it as the first one. So yeah, yes, that's that. And I guess that's it. We are done with our custom toggle, and it's working fine, and it can send out data.
They're nice.
So the last thing is to actually create a grid view and then connect the toggle to switch between them. So when building galleries with multiple layouts, one of the most important things to consider is how similar the layouts are to each other. What I mean is, if you are creating two layouts that are more or less similar in the sense that they have the same controls arranged in the same way, so in those cases you don't have to create a separate container, a separate design for each layout. You can just simply modify the existing one to fit your needs. However, if your layouts are dissimilar, meaning they are not the same thing, in those cases you would have to obviously create a new container with a new layout and make that visible when the layout ID is active. So that's what we are going to do in our cases. Since the two layouts are not similar, one is list, one is a card, and then they don't have the same controls, so we are going to go with that approach. So we are going to select our gallery and select the template icon, and then add in another container. So this time is going to be a responsive container, anyone is fine, since it's going to serve as our template container. So we set the X value to 0, set the Y value also to 0, and then all we'll do, we'll set the we set the width to parent.template width. So we just need to make sure it fills the gallery's template. And we'll do the same thing for the height. So parent.template height. So it has filled the template. And let's also change the name. For this one, we are going to call it container underscore table content underscore list. So that will serve as a list view. And for this new container that we just added, it's going to serve as a grid view. Yeah, same issue. Anytime you rename containers, all the internal items might have changed the alignment, so you just need to correct that. So we're going to set it back to stretch, and yeah, that's that. So yeah, back to our grid gallery. So let's begin connecting the gallery to the active toggle, to the custom toggle rather. So we only want the list layout to be visible if the active toggle ID is equal to 1. So what we are going to do is going to select the list container and set the visible property to this formula. So this would make it only visible when the active toggle ID is equal to 1. So custom toggle 1, which is this item dot active toggle ID is equal to 1. So anytime you switch it, it removes it. Anytime you bring it back in, it removes it, it brings it back. So now let's do the same thing for the rectangle that's serving as a separator. So the visible property, also the same thing. And then let's do the same thing for our table header. So the visible property, also the same thing. So once we switch, it goes out and it comes back in. Okay, so yeah, that's the first step. And then the next step is to change the template size and wrap count of the of the gallery. So we're going to switch it to the grid view and then select the gallery. And then what we need to do is to change the wrap count and the template size. For the wrap count, we are going to change it from 1 to this formula. So it's going to check if the active toggle ID is equal to 1. So meaning if it's in the list layout, the wrap count should be 1. So meaning 1 item on 1 line. But if it's the grid layout, it should be 3. So 3 items on 1 line. So here we have it. And then we'll do something similar for the template size. So the template size, if the active ID is equal to 1, meaning if it's the list layout, the template size should be 40, else it should be 180. Yep. And there we have it. We have 2 layouts, and we have the base structure for our grid layout. So now what we are going to do is to set the border radius to 0 and set the drop shadow also to 0. So inside of the grid template container, we are going to add in another container. So this time it's going to be a vertical container because that's how we want it to be structured. So we are going to set the minimum height to 0 and set the minimum width to 0, just so it takes the height and width from the parent. And then we select the parent container, and then let's add in a little bit of padding all around it. So we're going to add 10 at the top, 10 at the bottom, 5 at the left, and 15 at the right. So the reason we are adding 5 on the left and 15 on the right is because we want all of them to be left aligned, and that will give space for the scroll bar on the right side. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Now let's begin adding in items. So let's just rename this one container underscore gallery item, just so we can reference it easier. Okay, so now inside of the this gallery item container, we want to have 3 lines. One will contain the logo, the car name, and then the leasing status, and then the second line will contain the license plate, and then the last line will contain the leasing status, fleet ID, and the button. So yeah, let's do that. We'll add in a horizontal container this time. I think I selected vertical. Okay, so we can change it to horizontal here, and we want it to be about 60 in height. So we're going to turn off the flexible height and set the height to 60. Okay, and let's just turn off the border radius and the drop shadow, and then we'll add in a little bit of padding on the left and the right. Okay, so now we can just begin adding in the components. So first of all, let's just copy, since we've already done it in our list layout, we can just copy the items. So I'm going to switch to our list layout, but we also need to make sure that this grid layout is only visible when the grid layout is active. So let's copy that. Let's copy our condition and modify it. So we select the grid layout, and in the visible property, select change the visible property to only be true when the active toggle ID is equal to 2. So if we switch now, it should switch between the layouts without any issues. Okay, cool. So yeah, from the list layout, we want to copy this icon, sorry, the logo rather. So I've copied it, Control-C, then come back into the grid layout and just paste it there. So that's Control-V to paste. And then this one, we want it to be a little bit bigger. So we're going to set it to 50, set the width also to 50. And that looks great. And then we want the car make and then the car model to be stacked vertically on top of each other. So let's add in a vertical container. So vertical container, and for this one we want it to, let's set the minimum width to 80, and then we can turn off what's it called now, we can turn off the border radius and turn off the drop shadow. And then for the height, minimum height, just set it to 0, so it depends fully on its parent container. Then we can just copy what we need from the previous one. So I'm going to copy the car make and paste that inside of this, and then also copy the car model and paste that inside of this. So we have the two of them stacked on top of each other. So let's select the two of them and set the alignment to stretch and set the minimum width for both of them to 0. Yeah, and that is that. For the one on the top, we would increase the size to 11, and yeah, I think that's just about it. For the one on the bottom, I think I selected two of them. Yeah, for the one on the bottom, it's going to be a little bit bigger. We're going to set that one to 12 and change the I think we changed it to semi-bold for this one. Yep. And then let's change it to use uppercase characters only. So say upper this item, the model, like this. Yeah, and then we also want to add in the year beside it, so I'm just going to concatenate it. So and then add in a vertical line separator. Let's add some space, and then say another and add in this item dot year. So this item dot year. So that should now contain the model and the year in the same line, and that looks really cool. Then what we can now do is to select the upper one and set its vertical alignment to bottom, and then select the lower one and set the vertical alignment to top, just so they're more or less centered within the container. Okay, so now the last thing we want to add on the right is the, what's it called now, the leasing status text bill. So we are just going to copy that one from the list view. So go to the list view and then copy the container that has it. Then let's switch back and just paste it inside of line 1. So let's just name this one line 1 so it's easier for us to track. So line 1. Okay, so then we paste it in line 1. Let's also change this one back to stretch and change this one to center. Okay, cool. And for this one, we want it to be center, the height to be centered, and let's change it to be about 30. And I think that's okay. 30 should be fine. Or let's reduce it 25. Yeah, that looks much better. Also, let's add in some padding around the main gallery item container. So we're going to add in 10 all around it. So 10 on the top, 10 on the bottom, 10 on the left, 10 on the right, just so it's well centered within the item container. And then for this one, we don't want any drop shadow, so we're going to set that to none. Okay, so yeah, that's line 1 done. So line 2, as I said, you only want a text label, so we can just copy the text label directly, and that is going to be the, what's it called now, the license plate. So I'm going to copy that and just paste it directly inside of the gallery item container. And then for this one, we just want it to have a static height, so we're going to turn off the flexible height and set its height to 40. Then we can make it a little bit bigger, so let's say 10. Yeah, 10 should be okay. And lastly, let's move to line 3. So for line 3, it's going to be similar to line 1, so you can just copy that. So copy line 1 and then paste it again. So for this one, we want it to take the remaining of the height, so we're going to turn on flexible height and set the minimum height to, let's say, about 30. And then let's just delete all this one since we don't need it, so we're deleting it. So on the left side, we want to add, I want to add in the fleet ID and then the monthly lease rate, and then at the right we have the button. So let's do that. So we are going to copy the fleet ID container. So we're going to copy this one and then paste that inside of line 3. Let's change this to line 3. Line 3. Okay, so now we paste that inside of here. We want it to be centered vertically, so and set the height to 30. I think 30 is fine. Maybe let's increase it just a little bit since the layout is now much bigger than the other. All right, so 35 is, I think 35 is perfect. And then let's copy the monthly lease rates. Obviously we can't fit everything inside of the new layouts, so we'll just take the ones that I feel are the most important, and so we can leave out the purchase price and copy the lease rate. So copy that and let's paste that inside of line 3 container. And then for this one, we are going to set it to little black and increase it the size to 11, set the font weight to semi-bold, and that looks really cool. And then lastly, let's just copy our button. So we're going to copy the actual non-responsive container, and then let's switch back and paste that inside of this. So since this one is taking it has flexibility turned on, it fills the remaining space after the fleet ID and the button have taken their space. And yeah, that's it. 25. Let's also just increase it by 5 since we increased the fleet ID. So yeah, and that's it. Actually, that's all. So now let's just do some testing to see, and it looks cool. So I think the last thing we need to do is, anytime we switch to this grid view, I don't want this border around it, because the border was mainly the border for the list view table, so we can clear that in the grid view. So I'm going to select the gallery container, and then for the border thickness, let's just select the border thickness. We are going to add in this condition. So rather than it always being 1, we're going to check if it is in the list layout, it should have a border thickness of 1, else it should have a border thickness of 0, meaning no border. And we can see that in action here. And also we can, since we have a little bit of padding here that we do not need, we can also remove that padding. So for that one, we select the table data container, and padding left, we'll add in this condition. So if it is in list layout, leave it as 10, but if it's in the grid layout, use no padding, and then do the same thing for the right side. If it's in the list layout, use 10 padding, else use no padding. Also, let's increase the border radius of the gallery item for the grid view from 4 to 20, just to match the rest of the app that is more rounded. And there we have it. You can also add in an actual border color, but I think the drop shadow is okay for this one, and we might not need that. And so let's test it out. We have our side menu, we have our header component with the search and with the button, and we have our card gallery design with different backgrounds for each one. And then we have our multi-view gallery, the filter button, a button to add a new car, and then the toggle to switch between different layouts.
Nice. That brings us to the end of this video. In the next video, I have something really cool planned out for the gallery filters, so make sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications to get notified when I release the next video. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video or at least learned something, hit the like button and follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.